Welcome back to another hour of Scotch Hour. I am Noah.
And I'm Jesse.
All right. Well, we are at episode 114, climbing the charts here, 1 week at a time.
That's right.
So this week, we do have a fun lineup here for us, I think, and for all of you. Our Scotch of the week is the Lagavulin 2022 special release with the Red Phoenix, which I think is going to be appropriate somewhat for our Smarter Challenge this evening. From there, we're going to do our Shoutouts and Get It Togethers, followed by our restaurant with the Fort, and then our Smarter Challenge being a review of the House of the Dragons. Also, please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast if you do enjoy it. It does help us get the word out if you do like it. We are trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, so that way we can open up some more features by YouTube. So if you only listen to us once, that's fine. Please hit the like button and help us out. We would greatly appreciate that. You don't ever have to listen to us ever again if you don't like us, but we would love for you to come back and revisit us on occasion or every week and listen to our podcast here. And as well as that, we like to thank all of our current subscribers on YouTube, Rumble, and all of our podcast platforms that we are on. We greatly appreciate all of you. If you want to become a patron member, if you look in the descriptions down below, and the very first down below, you'll see a link there, and that'll take you to Podbean patrons link, and you can become a patron for as low as $1, and then all that gets reinvested into our podcast. All right, with that, we will start the show.
Scotch Reviewed.
This week's Scotch, the Lagavulin 12 2022 special release. This is undoubtedly going to be fantastic for me. The verdict is still out for Noah based on the 2021 release. A couple key notes here they mention on their canister: crackling spice rises from the smoky intensity. It's a combination of virgin oak casks and their smokiest reserves. So this is going to be very interesting to me because they have mentioned that it does have some of that honey sweetness and peaty strength, but also the smoky reserve in their brief history on the Lagavulin distillery. If you haven't caught it once before on one of our episodes, we've reviewed a multitude of their fine scotches. It is one of the oldest distilleries on the island of Islay. It's located Lagavulin Bay, so the southern portion of that island. We'll talk about this again in a second, but they're really known for their pear-shaped stills. You can see a beautiful view of the distillery from Lagavulin Bay, and like many of the distilleries, it's unmistakable from a distance. Great big white buildings with a huge Lagavulin lettering in black. Currently owned by Diageo, but originally founded in 1816 by John Johnston and Archibald Campbell Brooke. One thing also here, we always talk about this, their water source is the Solemn Locks. All of these distilleries do have a preferred water source. The Lagavulin uses those Solemn Locks in their 2 wash and 2 spirit stills with an output of approximately 1.4 million liters a year. One thing to note is there's a handful of distilleries, I believe it's 7 currently, on the island of Islay, and on the southern piece of that island, on the eastern side, you've got Port Ellen, and right above Port Ellen is Laphroaig, right above Laphroaig is Lagavulin, right above Lagavulin is Ardbeg. So in a very small proximity on that island, we do have 3 fantastic distilleries known for some of that peat that comes from the southeast coast of Islay, and the smoke that they bring to that Scotch. So, as mentioned, in 1816, John Johnson and Archibald Campbell Brooke, they built 2 distilleries on the Lagavulin property. However, for a century previous, there is history and notes on probably a dozen plus illicit distilleries basically located on that same property. It is not known which one of those 2 distilleries is the current Lagavulin, because one succeeded and one failed, and there's only one there now. Few decades later, 1835, Alexander Graham took over, and his son Walter Graham became the master distiller at the Lagavulin distillery. And there's a little bit of history here and there as time goes on. In the 1920s, the distillery was sold to Peter Maddy. Again, man, a little bit of history, some sales, some transfers. It was ultimately acquired by Guinness in 1986, who shortly thereafter merged with the Grand Metropolitan to form Diageo in 1997. Diageo's got their hands in a lot of different liquors, and especially Scotch. Again, known for their pear-shaped pot stills and a slow distillation process. This 12-year, 57.3 ABV, and I am excited to try it. What kind of notes would you like to share on these fantastic tours the Lagavulin Distillery is once again offering?
So the Lagavulin, they have their classic tour. This is a perfect for whiskey lovers that want to take a tour and get a Tudor tasting. Here, this normally goes for 22 Great British pounds. That's approximately 27 USD, and it lasts about 1.5 hours. And if you do kind of like scour the interwebs, if you will, a lot, and you scour them about like tours and Lagavulin, a lot of them will say like you definitely don't want to miss Lagavulin's tour, so it's definitely worth it. They do have another one that's a little bit of an upgrade, and this is called the Distillery Exclusive Experience.
That sounds like it's right up our alley.
I think it might be. And this is ideal for the whiskey enthusiasts. I said it the first.
You got it.
I said it the first time, and I couldn't say it the second or third time. All right. And those who are looking for an elevated experience, this is a 2-hour tour, or I should say a 2-hour experience. And it goes for 105 Great British pounds, or approximately 132 USD. And then from there, we have the warehouse experience. This is just a sample. You get a sample, some Lagavulin Drams straight from the casks. This is only a 1-hour tour. The cost of this is 38 Great British pounds. And that is approximately $48 USD. Obviously, that's with how inflation works and how the international exchange rates go. Those dollar bills could fluctuate, though. So,
especially with the current downward trend of our U.S. dollar.
Doing the downward dog.
That's right.
All right, that's what I got for my notes here on the tours.
So as we will now proceed into this, there is a little fun play on their history, as the Lagavulin likes to put it out there, on the back of the canister here. The flames of the phoenix. As our legend goes, one extraordinary day, the king of the Islay was reborn. A spark of sunlight fell from the sky, set the land ablaze, and when the flames subsided, the scorched earth was veiled in thick smoke. Suddenly, new life rose from the ashes in simmering feathers of honeyed gold and rich cinnamon. A regal phoenix phoenix soared above, its wings of fire powering the stills of Lagavulin, amplifying its spiced intensity. Lagavulin has long been the home of legends. Its rocky bay was crowned with a castle by lords of the Isla who ruled long ago. The distillery rose in succession, deeply respected, a king born to power. Made in the birthplace of distilling, this iconic Isla malt is intense and smoky, steeped in history and lore from over 200 years. In this deep expression from virgin oak and our smokiest reserves, peaty casks lead spice and smoke on their eternal dance with deep sweetness. The smooth, oily start shines with sweet richness before lemony citrus and sea salt add freshness and an explosion of spice to savor. Explosion of spice. That's what she said. Mid palate, the taste becomes more drying. Its smoky intensity ever growing. Great waves of peat wreather the long smoky spice finish. New fired Lagavulin soars to the fresh height of spiced smoke. I am digging the canister.
I agree. I think the canister looks great. The thing that worries me is this big chili pepper or explosion of spice. First of all, we know I'm just not a huge fan of spicy foods, so really anything too much above like a tobacco type spice, I'm not digging it. Anything that makes my mouth really kind of burn, I do not like. So, but we will see. I'm anxious to try this one, and I do love the canister, but I'm worried about the pepper.
We're about to find out. The canister is sweet. We pop this bad boy open, or sweet lady, as we might say. The bottle and the scotch looks a little pale in color initially. The label, much like they have done with all of the 20, 21, and 22 reserve labels, is a small version of the canister. And I've mentioned this, and you, I believe, have mentioned this as well, too. I wish they would have done something a little more with that. Made it a little more grand, like the canister. More impressive, possibly. But the flavor may speak for itself. 57.3% ABV, absolutely going to be speaking for itself. This is not for the faint of heart. When they talk about liquid courage, boys and girls, 57.3% ABV will get it done. Traditional Lagavulin foil, well done at top with the insignia and special release 2022 wooden topper, pressed cork, and 2 pours for the Scotch hour. I don't think this one's as offensive as the 2021. Not yet, at least.
We shall see once it hits my palate.
All right, well, I am excited. Good or bad, I'm sure you are too.
I am. Off to our...
It's like a roller coaster. It's like the Tower of Doom's going to fall and not kill me, right?
off to our warp speed and our tasting. Cheers.
All right, cheers.
All right, Lagavulin Special Release 2022. I think has renewed my belief in them as far as the special releases go, which is actually very appropriate with the Phoenix, right? A Phoenix will crash and burn, or it'll die, and then
Crash and burn, bitch.
and then it'll like rebirth itself into the right.
Yes, 100%.
Okay? I just want to make sure I got my
500 years, they die at age, and into a fiery flame comes out a young egg and Phoenix.
Okay, so I kind of want to make sure I got my mythological creature type thing scenario right there.
Yes.
So honestly, I think the 2021 special release, I love the canister just because I'm a Leo, so I love the lion on there a lot. But I think this 2022 release is something special, and it does give a much better representation of Lagavulin, if you will, at least in my opinion. So to begin with, the color I put here as a golden straw color, something that you would see in like in the nice fields of like maybe the Midwest as you're driving out from maybe the mountain region, the Mountain West into the Midwest, and you see like the nice wheat grass fields and stuff like that. You get like nice golden straw color. That's what it kind of reminds me of. As far as the aroma, I get popcorn and bacon with hints of smoky peat and brine. And I just love it. I do. I like that. I think it's great. You know, anytime I go to like the movie theaters, a lot of times I like to buy popcorn, not so much because I crave eating popcorn. It's more because I love the smell of the popcorn with that butter. And then you have like, and then when you eat it, you have that nice, probably really bad for you, oily butter. I do enjoy that as well. But honestly, if you take probably like a little bit of like melted bacon grease instead and put it on popcorn, that'd probably be better. That's kind of like what I kind of get here with that bacon and popcorn and the brine. So you get like all that saltiness and then that kind of hints there with the smoky peat. I think it makes it smells great. I don't know what else to say there. Now, as far as the palate, for me, hello, Mr. Oak Barrel. Nice to meet you. Because the Oak Barrel makes itself known and prevalent right at the beginning on my palate. I get a nice, sweet vanilla toffee flavor along with some caramel and then some lemon drop sweetness. Going like from like the front palate, and I really, in my opinion, the mid palate doesn't really exist. It's like pretty much bam front palate with the sweet vanilla toffee, caramel, and lemon drop, and then it goes, and then also you get another bam going right into your finish with the spice. And here I put here like little to no mid palate. But you get a big bang of chili spice with smoky oak and peat with hints of saline. And here's the thing: that was when I sipped in this type of cup here. But then when I went to this kind of cup or glass or crystal, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not even saying the proper names for any of these right now, which is fine, because I'm going to keep it kind of lowbrow anyways. But the flavor profile does change a little bit. When moving to the rocks glass, I tasted more, or the aroma had a lot more of a lemon zest smell to it in the aroma. And then the oak and the smoky peat was a lot more prevalent in the finish. But I did like it overall. I like this one. Unlike the 2021, I wasn't quite ready for the spice, and I really gave that one. I still think I did it disjustice by giving it such a low points. And maybe that shouldn't have been my very first one I've ever scored. This one here, I do really enjoy. I gave it for the color. I gave it 4 out of 5 points. I like the coloring. Nothing really totally wrong with the coloring, but I don't know. It just didn't quite super impress me. So I gave it 4 out of 5. The package, I gave it 4 out of 5. Once again, I think the package has to go over the top to be a 5. Now, as far as the aroma, I gave it 27 out of 30 points. I really did enjoy the aroma of this one. The palate, I also enjoyed, even though there wasn't very much of a mid palate. I gave that one a 26 out of 30. And then the finish, I also gave it 26 out of 30. This giving us 87 out of 100 in the point scale there. And something I forgot to mention here on the finish, it is a nice lingering finish. It's a long finish. The body, once again, I wish the medium part of the palate was just a little bit more, because it's really hard for me to say whether or not it was a medium-bodied Scotch, but that would be my guess. And I just have a hard time really saying that just because I got a lot out of the front palate and a lot out of the back palate. Kind of reminds me when I kind of used to drink when I was doing wine buying. It reminded me a lot of some like the early days of Australian wines where it was just like a huge fruit bomb up front and it had like no mid palate. And then unlike those Australian wines, this actually has a good finish. Those Australian wines had like really no finish to them at all. But I do like this. I would say I would recommend getting, taking, if you can find this on the shelf, buying it. It's worth the buy, worth the purchase. Would I take it to a black tie affair? Definitely. I think it's a sharp Scotch bottle, and it won't let you down. I don't think, in my opinion. When I take it to a poker game, it depends. Like the guys I used to play poker with in college in my earlier years, probably not. But if there are a bunch of guys who smoke stogies and love Scotch, then probably so. But overall, probably not. This is one that I would keep on my shelf and kind of covet for special times, either a special occasion or when a good friend comes over who appreciates a good Scotch. So that's my take.
Man, it's a good review. It's a thorough review. And I really enjoyed some of your explanations. Many of the Scotches we visit are within a point, if not dead on, in the total score. And the Lagavulin special release is one of those ones where we do vary a little bit. And I haven't figured out exactly why. I'm still looking into that. But for me, this Scotch, the Lagavulin 12yr special release 2022, is awesome. It is fantastic. The only thing that is a little steep about this, my only struggle with this, is the price point. So you're talking $160 plus tax, and that's assuming you're getting it at a discount like we did. $160 for the bottle, but otherwise, this is, for me, a home run by Lagavulin. And I don't know what, just rolling down the top. It is hard to give this a 5. And I can't. I agree with you. It is not over the top. But looking at the detail, both in the bottle and the canister and the gloss and the matte, they have done a really nice job. They have gone the extra inch. I think that's a neo-Nazi movie or something, isn't it? The Extra Inch, the Nazi movie. We'll go on. That's a story for a different day. But they have gone the extra distance to go gloss versus matte, to bring out the colors and the depth of the picture on the canister. The bottle, not as much. And the bottle really is one of the things actually where even if the canister had been a 5, I don't know if I could give it a 5 just based on the bottle, because that is one where it just doesn't keep up for me. However, then you get to the color. The color for me is a 5. I can't go around saying blondes are my thing, but you get to those Bridgets and the others, the supermodels, platinum blonde, which this is definitely a blonde Scotch. This is a sexy platinum blonde color to me. So for color 5 out of 5, it is like liquid gold. And on the nose, man, I agree with you on the nose. It is impressive. Smoke, brine, peat. Oh, and it finishes with what I would say is an oily lemon smell. And what I mean by oily lemon is when you're spraying your furniture and you're using furniture polish, that's kind of that like mineral, like almost chemical lemon smell that I get at the end. And if I was afraid of it, man, this would not be the Scotch to drink. But, if it's good enough for wood, it's good enough for me. The palate. It was actually hard not for the nose, a 28 for me. The palate, it was hard not to give it more. This thing almost deserves bonus points because whereas you find a void in the mid palate, I find a pause and beautiful sanctuary a resting place from the front palate to the back palate before the finish. The front palate is all honey and creamy and lemon, which is perfect when I consider, for me, the finish on the nose is the lemon. That's after I've got the smoke and the wood, the peat, and I think you mentioned this, and I think that is on the nose a little bit, the little toffee, but on the palate, boom, right off the bat. Honey, cream, and a little bit of lemony caramel. And then there is this pause, almost a void. It's a beautiful transition, however, for me, because the dynamic difference from the sweet to the poignant immediately goes to black pepper, and then that sweet caramel goes to burnt toffee and smoky wood. And I love it. And then that back palate transitions into a wonderful long finish. I'm digging this Scotch, the long finish. So nose was a 28, the palate was a 28, and the finish. At first, I was like, is this finish that good? It is that good to me, because I can imagine drinking this, and we'll get to this later in the show, with creme brulee. I can imagine this going amazingly with a chocolate cake, and also a limoncello cake. I'm just telling you, man, I think this is, for me, a brilliant dessert Scotch. So the finish, also a 28 total for me, a 93. Now that 93 is also based on, this is a special release, and it is something that I'm enjoying in the moment. And our scoring system is really based on what is just that. Now, things can always come and go and change, but if we were really going after, is this something that Lagavulin can repeat every year? It would be tough. Is it something that's truly a namesake to Scotch, or are these added flavors, burnt, charred oak barrels, different things they've done to create this Scotch? Yes. So that would put into position some different questions. A good example, the Noah might give is this truly a Burrow? Or is this a knockoff? And this is definitely a variation of a fantastic Scotch for me, though. 93, would I take it to a poker game? Man, I'm right there with you. I'm taking this to a poker game if I'm Brad Pitt in Mr. and Mrs. Smith, dressed to the nines, driving a caddy sports car or Ferrari, and I can afford it every day, and these other people deserve it. If they don't, no, I wouldn't. But if it's close friends, people I love and trust, my close 5 friends, so to speak, then yeah, I'm bringing this and playing poker and drinking fabulous Scotch, because if I'm doing that, I'm probably also at some point going to smoke a stogie. I don't play a whole lot of poker, but I'd probably be smoking a stogie. And I think this could hold its weight against a medium cigar easily. Would I take it to a black tie event? Yeah, man, if nothing else for the fact that it is an outstanding Scotch to me. And I'd love to tell a little bit about Lagavulin's history, because most people have no clue how this Scotch came to be, or the fact that Diageo, the owner now, has really done some nice things, as much as we hate these huge conglomerates owning so many different Scotch. I like to call them houses like Game of Thrones, but distilleries, there's some good and bad that comes with that. But at the same time, I have to say, these twists they work with the master distillers to create these special releases has been fun. It's part of the journey. It's when you get the bad barbecue right after you had the great barbecue. This is the great barbecue, and then with the bad barbecue, who knows which way you're running. But for me, this is great black tie event. Yes, keeping it on the shelf. Yes. It's not for everyone. It is not for everyone, but it is a fabulous expression by Lagavulin. Cheers.
It's time for our shoutouts.
All right. I want to keep it simple with shoutouts, make it quick and easy because I can see I've gone long with my Scotch review. With that, shoutouts to number one, honestly, Fernando Alonso. Everyone was laughing at him coming into this season, laughing at the Aston Martin team. Myself, I didn't really think much of it, but I wasn't laughing at him. You know why? Because I actually think that the more mature guy always has something to bring. And up until the end, Tom Brady brought it. Right. And that is one of the things that he is doing right now. Fernando Alonso, cheers to you. Shout out. Finishing third again, this time in the Miami Grand Prix, currently third in the points championship. My other shout out goes to, how do you not give a shout out to Max Verstappen? Failed to get any anytime in Q3. So started at ninth position for this race. And worked his way up to win it on some used tires during the middle of the race. Just a brilliant drive because, Max, keep this in mind, and I know that everyone else is telling you the same thing, and I want you to be dangerous, but you were consistent. And keep that up. People who are consistent, typically go the distance. So I thought those two really put on a show that was worth watching. And not that... you've got the other people who finished second or third or fourth or anything didn't. I don't even need to mention their names, though, because they didn't make it exciting for me. And these two individuals, man, Alonso, Verstappen, thank you for keeping Formula One exciting.
I didn't get to watch the race. A little bit bummed about it. I know it's recorded, but it's not quite the same watching it recorded as it is watching it live. So I'll just do a quick shout out. Thanks for introducing me to F1. So there's my shout out. I really don't have a shout out this week, but that'll have to be it. I don't have any get it togethers this week. I feel like we've beaten a dead horse with Biden and stuff. Like it just keeps getting worse in the media for him. So I think we might see an impeachment coming here soon. So get it together, Biden administration.
It should always be a first. They tried with Trump and failed so many times. I don't know if the Republicans would waste the money at this point. I think they're smarter about that.
I don't know, but I think also I think the Democrats might be on board to do an impeachment, or even do an amendment. I think it's the 26th something or other, where they can oust the president. Because I think they are starting to see Biden as being detrimental to their ticket, even though he's running again. So, but I'm just saying, like, it's too easy to bash these guys, and the fact that they're saying stuff like there is no border crisis, and the title was Title 43 or whatever that kept people out, that Trump signed into as an executive order, or it's now going to expire, and we're going to see a huge, massive influx of illegal aliens. So anyways, get together, Biden administration. That's all my get togethers.
Yeah, the states still have some say in there, but it is a tough thing to proceed with. My get it together doesn't go to Biden. It goes to people who voted for him. And what I would say based on this is, at the end of the day, sometimes the feedback that makes us, and I don't want to use the word hate because that's too strong of a word, but the ones that offend us from our bosses, from the people we have chosen to work for or that we have put in power. And that's a truth. You got to understand, if you go work at Taco Bell or McDonald's or anywhere, you are choosing a place to work. Whether or not you interviewed with them, you meet your boss, you get to choose whether or not you continue to give them the power to be your boss. And so you voted them in. Well, unlike the presidency, you can go work at a different Taco Bell or McDonald's any given day. With the president, you're stuck with them unless they really mess up for a lot longer term. But realize the mass put this person in a position of power and okayed it. And now we're complaining. I hear people complaining. So where is the tuition reimbursement? And I'm like, the tuition reimbursement is still a thing, but you're talking about tuition forgiveness. That was most likely never going to pass, and it's still stuck, and who knows where it is. If you voted for a president because of that, you didn't consider for 1 second that money isn't just going away. The debt doesn't disappear. You're paying it in taxes for the rest of your life instead of to one person, to the government in taxes. And then you're also passing it on to your kids and your neighbors. And I think people should probably have to start paying pet tax. I mean, they're polluting the earth as much as anyone else, right? So let's really start thinking about that. That's my take on that piece. And then it's the same thing, though, with people who are like, oh, yeah, well, all these people in this area or that area, he's going to give them all this money so they can start a life in America since they fled their country and they were put in prison for fleeing their country illegally and entering ours. It's like, whoa. Where's that money coming from? Well, Biden will give it to them. No. You will be paying those tax dollars for the rest of your life. All right, this week's restaurant to go with the Smarter Challenge is the Fort restaurant. And I thought it was fitting when we paired up the Phoenix to go with the Dragons and the Fort to go with some old school meat eaters. The Fort restaurant. We sat down and we had some Sebastiani, Sonoma County Cabernet to start out our dining experience. They have a really nice wine list, and it is also really nice for them priced. And I mean that in the sense of sometimes you can find some restaurants where the markup is 50%, 100%. Most of their bottles, based on what we have seen in liquor stores, were 150 to 200% markup. So if you can get it for $30 in a restaurant, plan to pay $90 or more at the Fort. However, great wine list. Sebastiani, Noah Selected, Sonoma County Cab, fantastic. Followed that up with the Buffalo Empanadas. They brought out 2 sauces. We were mixed review on the sauces. When I say mixed, meaning they were both delicious to me, but I definitely had my favorite. Noah's was the tomatillo. Mine was more of the red barbecue sauce. But the bison buffalo empanadas for $15 were a slam dunk. We followed up with dinner entrees, and I went with, and we also had the salads. Of course, the salads were fantastic. Mine was the blue cheese, and I followed that up with and it's Josepha's buffalo empanadas, by the way, but I followed that up with the herb butter buffalo tenderloin. This restaurant is not for the faint of heart for price. So understand you were going to pay a little bit more, but for my experience, man, I'm worth it. So the $72 herb butter buffalo, tenderloin filet mignon was perfect. I do say perfect, but you must stay with a nice cut of meat like this, in my opinion, on that rare/medium rare cusp, because you do not want to overcook it. A pinch of salt, and it was divine. I finished it off with their seasonal dessert at the time, and it could just be that she said it was an orange creme brulee. I think I might have not or misheard orange zest creme brulee, but it was a fabulously cooked creme brulee, perfectly crusted with an orange zest flavor in there to me, that I paired with my after dinner drink of a sherry, the Macallan Sherry Cask 12-year, and OMG, it was amazing. So was the price. It's not cheap again, not faint of heart. Carrie, our server,
I forgot her name.
Was fantastic. The food was amazing. The atmosphere is not modern, but that's part of what makes it, for me, a destination. So it is an old Ford-style teepee in the entry with a real wood fire going out back. They do have seating, and you got to realize that's weather permitting, in a sense of also you might be seated out there and rain does tend to roll over the foothills. This is not far from Golden, Colorado, but it is a beautiful scenery. So value-wise, man, service. Service did not fail us once. So service for me, and there's only a few restaurants that ever get this. Service was a 10, and that's because they didn't fail. I expected the timeline for a high-end meal to be long. This is in the upper tier spectrum, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a fast food restaurant. This is not middle tier. This is high-end and expected. So what it is not is a high-tier modern Italian restaurant. It is a high-tier restaurant catering to an impression of, man, these are fabulous food and dining, but we're also incorporating this building to make it understood that there were trappers and there's a history to Colorado, particularly that area. So service was a 10. The environment overall for me, I love that they keep it classic. And it's hard for me to give anything a 10. The environment, the ambiance, the atmosphere was a 9. And I think that's just because for me, and others may disagree, Noah may give you a different number. For me, it's only a 9 because it just wasn't sexy. There was no sex appeal there. But for the food was a 10. Food was absolutely 10. There was nothing bad that I drank or ate. The rolls, the herb rolls, and man, just everything was a 10. Overall value, even though the bison filet, herb butter bison filet was $17, and the empanadas, the Sebastiani was $51. So again, it's not cheap, man. Value still right up there at a 9 for me. So overall total experience, it's hard not to give it a 10. It's a 9.5. I don't give many 0.5s. But it was absolutely a 9.5. It is a destination. Would I take a date there? Yes, if I'm not trying to be all fancy like, or if I'm trying to be all fancy like, but the understanding is, hey, you're going to go there. The atmosphere doesn't fit your tux to a T. However, you'll also be just as fitting in if you're an Indian and a chief with your headdress and some chamois clothes. You're going to be equally fitting in there. But it is a true experience. Would I meet a friend there? Absolutely, as long as I'm not faint of heart and I've got time. You got to have time. They will make your dinner fantastic. You got to give them time. Overall, a 9.5. And yeah, I loved it.
All right, so the fort, it is a destination spot, definitely. I'll just say that from the get-go. We were supposed to release our new restaurant point system with this one here. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to really put that together, but we will hopefully have that for you guys next week. The fort is located in Morrison, just a short hop, skip, and a jump from Red Rocks Amphitheater. And a lot of people, if you're flying into Colorado to see a concert at Red Rocks, I highly recommend that you go to the fort and have dinner there at the fort and then head up to your show. It will make for a wonderful evening.
Give it time.
Give it time, yeah. You got to make sure you get there early so that way you can make sure you can make
have
it to
reservations.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to have reservations. Yeah. So once again, with this, it is if you are going to Red Rocks, set it up for an earlier reservation time so that way you can make your concert, and that will make for one phenomenal evening that you won't forget. Driving up to this location here, it's right there in the base of the foothills, coming out of Denver. So you do get a little bit of mountain driving, not very much. It's probably like 2 or 3 miles of like mountain driving, really, but nothing like too extreme. But it's just a nice little intro going into the foothills, and as you pull up, you see a nice old Western type of fort, which the fort is a replica of a Western fort that you would have seen in the Old West. When you walk in, you walk through these 2 wooden double doors to enter into the outer wall of the fort, and it is pretty cool because then when you walk into the main courtyard area, As Jesse mentioned, they have a bonfire going, and as you're walking up, the smell of that burning wood it just smells great. And there's a teepee there. They have like a little trading shop there as well. And then as you walk in, it looks tiny, but it's mostly because it's set up in sections. There's not like a huge open aired dining room area. They have it's kind of broken up into two different sections, which I think kind of adds to the environment and making it more intimate. The area that we sat in is kind of like in between from being inside to kind of like a quasi inside, and then you have the outside patio, and it was still a nice area to sit in. If you do have the opportunity to wander around, even on the outside on the back patio area where they have like a fire pit there with a couch to overlook the Denver skyline, really is kind of impressive. But they also have like old cannons out there and stuff like that. And so far, I'm just talking about the environment. I haven't even talked about the food yet. And right here, just talking about the environment, when you walk in there, that already screams destination, right? And the way the wait staff dresses, the waiters and the waitresses, they try to keep it kind of traditional to they don't exactly dress like as trappers or people from the Old West, but they do have kind of like a stylistic sense to them that kind of relates to that era. Now, the food, as Jesse's talking, it does tie into like the old trapper or Old West area of Colorado's history. And this place is really is known for their bison and their bison steaks. And I actually ended up getting their what's called the Fort Game Platter. And it comes with the bison sirloin and elk medallion, and then also a grilled teriyaki quail. The quail was actually really divine. It's probably that meat probably was the most moist of all the meats.
I love moist meat.
Yeah. I mean, it had just great flavor and great juiciness to it. The bison sirloin probably isn't the if you want like a top-notch bison meat, I would avoid staying away from the bison sirloin and going with the filet mignon. That is going to give you a much better flavor and a much better experience if you want to eat pure bison. I wanted to try the game plate, so that way I had a little bit of variety, which I recommend. It's a great plate. It's phenomenal. The potatoes that they cook with it, that was very tasty. The tricolored carrots was wonderful. And like Jesse, I got the dinner salad. That comes automatically with the meal, and I got the vinaigrette with it, and I enjoyed the house vinaigrette that they made. The service, great, but not outstanding. So therefore, I would give it a 9 and not a 10. It is in the higher end, and usually, like with higher end restaurants, you have multiple people waiting on you. Sometimes like anywhere from 2 to 5 people sometimes, depending on like the restaurant you go to. Here they have your main waiter or waitress, and there is another person that comes by and picks up the plates. But it was like I said, I give it a 9. They didn't interrupt us. They're super friendly, enjoyable. Could I think there could have been an extra notch that it could hit? I do think there's an extra notch, and this is not a knock on them because a 9 is a very great score.
It is a great score.
The meal itself, I wasn't wanting, that's for sure. It was great, well cooked, hit all the right temps on the meats, but I'm giving it a 9 as well. But I do think it's a great place. The atmosphere, I spent most of my time talking about the atmosphere there. That to me, that's a 10. So ultimately, I'm gonna give it a 9.5. Would I take a date there? Yes. Would I meet friends there? Yes. Is it a destination point? Yes. It's all of the above. And the unfortunate part is I've been to other restaurants that actually are slightly bit better that would give 10s to, and that's probably why this is getting a 9.5.
That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. You had that experience. I could, would say the exact same, except that I literally blocked out all of those because none of those, like if I'm going for a fine dining experience where I want it to be formal, this gets a 5 for the atmosphere. But looking at the different their purpose, that's the only reason I gave that piece a 9 was because that was their goal and they nailed it, and they don't hide it. They sell it.
No, they don't.
I love that.
No, I think it's great too. I mean, but if we're putting it into that kind of category, it's something to be addressed. And if you look at our scorings, they're pretty much they're pretty
bottom
similar.
line. Yeah, just different arrangements. Restaurant, exact same score at the end for the total. Scotch, not so much. All right, this week's Smarter Challenge review, the first season of HBO's House of the Dragon, much like the Macallan or, the other Scotches, the Dalmore, House of the Dragon. Don't mistake it, House of Dragon. No, House of the Dragon. And what did you think?
So at first I really didn't want to watch the series. I really loved Game of Thrones. This series, I didn't really want to dive into it. And sorry. I think it might be more due to George R.R. Martin than anything else, because he was supposed to finish the Game of Thrones book series like a long time ago, or at least put out book 6 forever ago, and he still hasn't. And so I'm like, why do I really want to support anything that he does at this point? Well, I've been waiting forever to read book 6. So I was kind of holding that a little bit against this series here. And then once I did start watching it, I only watched like the first couple of episodes, and I only made it to right when the young girl turns into what's her name?
Rhaena Targaryen?
Yeah. When she turns from when she's like a little girl, then like that very first episode,
The next actress takes place.
yeah, when she becomes the adult. That first episode when she's the adult, I was like, all right, I just can't handle this. I didn't even finish that episode either. I just got like halfway through, I was like, I can't deal with this, and I stopped it. And so I didn't even bother about this whole series until you brought it up as a Smarter Challenge. And then I'm like, you know what? I really should have watched the end of that episode, because the end of that episode, I forget exactly what happens, but it was enough to be like, yeah, I want to keep watching this now. Like, why did I ever stop watching it? And really, it is I was actually, I'm excited for season 2. I'll put it that way. I went into it not wanting to watch it. I gave up on it like halfway through the season when I did try to watch it on my own. But then after it being a Smarter Challenge, I'm excited for season 2. So that's kind of like what I thought about it.
I find it interesting you mentioned that. Overall, my impression, I had not watched any of it when it first came out because I had no desire. There was nothing that led me to go see what led to the Game of Thrones. But once I started watching it, I actually got hooked. And I do think it's funny that you mentioned that when I'm probably going to butcher her name, but Miley Akode transitioned as the actress playing Princess Rhaenyra transitioned to Emma D'Arcy. That was interesting because at that point I'm like, okay, why am I going to finish this? But I agree with you. It's a weird transition because I'm like, okay, similar facial traits, but clearly not the same person. Did 10 years go by and they're not emphasizing that? What just happened? Also, the end of the last episode was like, what TF? Like, what's going on here? Am I okay with this? Am I not okay with this? They were okay with this at that time. I'm just trying to figure it out. And it was interesting. So my overall thought, though, was once I got started, it was fun to watch. It is definitely mature. I would not go having your 8-year-old kids watching this, especially alone, because that's just wrong in modern society's eyes. For the masses, but it was good fun. I loved their settings. I loved the attention to detail they gave to costume. The actors and actresses did a fantastic job, and much like the original Game of Thrones, season to season to season to season till the end. Even in the end, there are these what the hell just happened moments where it does hook you. Like when Sean Bean, and if you haven't watched the original Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon,
Spoiler alert.
yeah, in the original Game of Thrones, when Sean Bean is killed near the beginning, of the series, it's just like, wait a minute, I thought this guy was gonna ride to die till the end, not till the end of this
Season 1.
But it was a lot of fun for me as well. With that, do you have any characters that really stood out to you, the ones that made this first season shine?
Well, I would say before I jump into that,
Yeah.
I want to talk about the opening sequence. This is for those of you who don't know, this the opening sequence is the 3D model of old Valeria, and so the camera does swoop through and across the Valerian city, and the blood that flows through there actually flows through the bloodline, starting with the doom of Valeria, and then they link from Aegon the Conqueror all the way down to the princess, or we call it at the end of the season 1, she's called the Black Queen, which is Princess or Queen Rhaenyra. And that's the sequence there. That's what that whole opening sequence is about. Much like the same sequence, I should say similar to like the sequence that you would see in the original Game of Thrones, but still having the same kind of opening credit music that you had from the Game of Thrones. So yeah, I wanted to mention that opening sequence because I thought that was kind of important because it does go through like the bloodlines and how it starts with Aegon the Conqueror down to the princess. Since that kind of takes us from the history of the Targaryens all the way to that point in time that we're in the TV series. Now, as far as actual characters, there is nobody like Peter Dinklage, or however you say his name.
I think that's right, Peter Dinklage.
Yeah, so the I drink and know things character from the Game of Thrones. Which was what was his name? Something Lannister. I forget what his name is. I know it's Lannister. Is his last name?
Just a little Lannister.
So yeah,
Call him the Imp.
There's no character exactly like him in the series, and I think to actually pick out an actual like character in this series is a little bit hard because the actors. Oh yeah, Tyrion Lannister. It's a little bit hard to pick one because you have like actors are changing because it's showing like some of them from like when they're kids, like when they're older, and the ones that they don't show that way. I guess they didn't really leave a huge impression on me, like Viserys, which is the king. He I don't know. He gets pretty nasty looking near the end.
Dude, he's like the goddamn crypt keeper.
Damien, though, his brother, Damien Targaryen, I would say at first I didn't like his character, but I think his character kind of comes into its own as we go through the season, and he becomes a better character. And it's kind of, and then also the Princess Rhaenyra, she is kind of like, I don't know. There's parts of her character that I do like, and it's played by two different actresses, so it's kind of hard to really say if I like this character or if I don't like this character. But this whole first season kind of revolves around her and her being the heir to the throne, and it in a way I kind of almost feels like she's kind of like those like spoiled rich kids. Hey, she's kind of pouty, like if she doesn't get her way type of thing. But the kind of like I know you're gonna kind of talk about this like how it is in the TV series, but Rhaenyra, she was born in 97 AC, became a dragon rider at age 7. At 111 AC, she wore a dramatic red and black dress. And this is to the wedding, which was with her friend. What is it, Alicent Highgarden, and she wore a green dress to the wedding. And I'm not exactly sure if that's how it appeared in the TV series. I can't remember that.
It is,
but that's definitely how it is in the book. And this really starts up the whole greens versus blacks. And as we get a little closer, going into second season, I would imagine, this is where we have the civil war between the greens and the blacks. You have the Green Council versus the Black Council. And we started seeing that in the last episode. And here's what I wanted to bring up, actually, was Septon Ustens said that Rhaenyra lost her virginity at age 16 to her uncle, and this is Damien, right? Damien. At age 16, the uncle dressed her up as a page boy to take her to brothels to observe how the act of love is done and to learn the womanly arts. So this was like an ongoing thing in the book, where it's not an ongoing thing in the TV series. They only show it once.
Well, I think Damon,
he went there all the time.
He went there all the time, but I agree. Like, I think they had to adapt a little bit, because that was one of the pieces we had talked about where it's just like, yeah, that's weird. Like, that was normal back then. Nowadays, you can't get away with that stuff. But back then, a 30-year-old man could marry a 12-year-old girl with the king's permission at any time.
I don't know. You got like little kids like now dressing up in like drag queen. So I don't know.
I identify as a dragon. All right.
But in any case, I guess if I have to pick two characters, I guess it would be those two. And I'm not really sure. Maybe you have to wait till the second season to really see who I really like, because I think near the end of season 1, I'm starting to like the one-eyed guy with the patch. I forget what I don't think his name is
Prince Aemon Targaryen.
Okay.
Yes, I agree with you. He is
he's the second, Aemon the second.
Yes. Man, this is tough for me, because I think that both Miley and Emma did a great job playing the princess, Rhaenyra Targaryen. But Matt Smith, who plays Daemon Targaryen, did an amazing job at his role. He is probably my favorite of series 1. And I also found it interesting. I'm like, where do I know this guy from? Oh, wait, snap. He was the 11th Doctor Who.
Never watched Doctor Who, so I wouldn't know.
All right. So he was the 11th Doctor Who. And so all of a sudden, some different pieces started clicking. And you can say they do it intentionally or not, but I do believe when writers write things, they write to roles, to characters. And I think he himself, Matt Smith, played that role perfectly, because that's the kind of person they were trying to write it to. Ewan Mitchell playing the second prince, Aemon Targaryen, who to me literally looks like he perfectly played. White hair, patch over one eye had been cut out, long face, riding a giant dragon. He literally looks like an anime character. Brilliant. I see him going the distance in season 2.
Well, he does.
Okay, well, there you go. That was just a guess, but leading into it, man,
he like this whole book, or like this book, or this part, or this era. This is where this sets up like where this is where the dragons come to the end.
And man, it's just I much like yourself, I was like, okay, I picked this as a smaller challenge. I watched one episode on a whim. It was pretty good, but I really want to see where this is going. And then by the end of season 1, man, I'm like looking at the Black Queen, and I'm like, shucks, now I have to wait for season 2. Waiting sucks.
Waiting does.
And I'm a patient person, but like, let's start to do the math, ladies and gentlemen. Let me aim at the millennials first so they can have their anxiety attacks and get over it, right? What we're going to tell you is by the time we get to the end of the Game of Thrones series, you're going to be 124 and you're not going to remember the beginning.
All right, so his name is Aemon Targaryen. That's the one with the eye patch. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Yeah. So I would say he could be my favorite character coming up.
Big ass dragon too.
Yeah. I didn't like him as a kid though.
Oh no, the guy was a total jerk. And I don't know that he ever becomes a good person. But at the end of the day, and this is this interesting tie, he could be a Donald Trump. At the end of the day, though, back then, you didn't have a choice. You can be like, oh, screw you, throw an egg on Donald Trump. And if it's Aemon Targaryen, Aemon's like, he can keep his tongue, just cut off his head.
No, that's not Aemon.
No, I know, but no, that's Daemon. But what I'm saying is that could be the sort of reaction you would get.
I think Aemon is probably almost like the mirror image of Daemon.
I agree. And I think that's part of why they're some of my favorite characters is because I think Aemon in season 2 is going to mature so much. I can only anticipate even what to expect. I think it's going to be phenomenal.
And here's the thing. I think a woman holds them both at bay.
Wow. I wonder
or restrains them.
That would be.
Because the queen or the
Green Queen?
The Green Queen, yeah.
Holds Aemon at bay.
Holds Aemon at bay.
And the Black Queen.
And the Black Queen holds Daemon at bay.
There you go.
Which I think it's almost like...
It's reverse psychology right there.
It's almost like they emasculate. Or is it emasculate?
I disagree. I think it's like reverse psychology. They're just controlling the dragons until they're ready to release them because those two are the two that throughout this first season do have the most potential for power, but they also play their own games of ebb and flow to, do I really want the power? And I think that's the truth is at some point we all have to decide, do I really want the power?
So talking about Aemon, he was a little whiny kid, didn't get his dragon for what I forgot.
Until he got the dragon.
Well, yeah, like he didn't get, like, I don't know what happened to his egg or whatever, but his egg broke. I'm not sure what happened to his dragon egg, but like even his own brother and his cousins were all about making fun of him, dressing that pig up with wings and giving it to him, saying he'll never have a dragon type of thing. Then he goes and gets the dragon, as you mentioned. And, but in the process, when he goes and gets that dragon, which happened to belong to someone else, but that person
Daemon's wife,
it caused a fight between all the cousins. And you could, I guess not all the cousins. I should say
many of the cousins.
Well, they're not cousins though. He's like all the kids were cousins.
Nephews.
All of his nephews.
We nephews and uncles. That's true. They love to play with the sex in the Game of Thrones. So,
but I think his nephews were slightly bit younger than him, but yeah, his nephews were picking. This is where I kind of get a little bit weirded out here.
See, this is what I envision. I'm like, wow, people find it so offensive in porn. Meanwhile, Game of Thrones, we're just throwing our seeds everywhere.
No, so in like the first couple, or maybe it's like the first 1 or 2 or 3 episodes, when the brother and the 2 nephews, who are roughly the same age as Aemon, but when we go later into the season, it looks like the nephews are way younger than Aemon.
I think Aemon is just matured, grown, as some do, much quicker.
Because they did not look the same age. They look like they're like way younger and way weaker.
Well, I think that's intentional. Leading up to season 2, episode 1, I think we're going to find they're all grown up but they wanted us to believe, man, these guys can't hold their weight to Aemon.
Yeah. And I think, because I guess all the cousins or his nephews and nieces ganged up on him and stabbed him in the eye. So he lost his eye, but he gained a dragon. And he even tells his mom, it
was worth it.
Me losing my eye is worth it. But he definitely held a grudge all the way through. And he fucked up at the end.
He did, because, and I think that's the truth, that is a life lesson that they really go to in the Game of Thrones here, which is, don't say it's okay, it's all even, it's all fair.
If it's not. Because at the end, you could tell something was still hearkening, something growing, some fury, some rage, some desire to retaliate, to get revenge. And he does that. And then he's like, oh, crap. He went a bit too far.
I just started a war. I just killed my uncle.
No, he killed his nephew. He was the uncle.
Yes, but see, that's where it's actually real, is because of the timeline. He can actually be an uncle, but be younger.
Yeah, I don't think he was younger.
Even though he looked older.
So, I don't know. Where do you want to go from here?
Man, really the last thing is, for me, 1, 2, or 3 favorite moments in season 1 that lead you to eagerly await season 2, much like myself.
Okay, first one is got to be the war between Daemon and the Crab King.
Ooh, that was a good one.
I thought that whole little scenario or scene throughout there was pretty good and pretty interesting. I did enjoy that a lot.
I think it's also good. I agree with you. That's in my top 3. I also agree, but I think for me, do you have a reason that was yours, or was it just like the general thesis?
Well, for me, I think it partially sets up Daemon of how much of a badass he is, and kind of sets up his character, because his brother is like, you're not going to have my support. Don't do this. Don't do that. And he's like, well, fuck you, brother. I'm going to go do what I'm going to do. And you took me away from being the heir of the throne. So screw you. I'm going to go make my name for myself and go make my own legend.
I think you're right. Daemon is also, though totally respectful, where as opposed to trying to kill his brother when he could, he doesn't try to do any of that. But the other piece for me, what you mentioned, it kind of sets him up like, hey man, this guy's a badass. And for me, what sets him up is, hey, this guy's a badass, is he takes arrows and keeps on going like it was nothing. Man, that's someone who can deal with pain. And throughout the entire first season, all 10 episodes that he's in and has any active role in, which is more than half, you see that this is a man that has gone through pain and can withstand it. And even in the episode when he's with Princess Rhaenyra, and he has to make this choice after he brought her to a brothel, what do? He walks away. And I'm not saying he should have ever brought her there, but he absolutely at the end did the right thing. If you're thinking about simple current morals.
Is that one of your scenes?
For me, the crab killing that piece was another big one. Yes, the second one for me leads into when he takes Princess Rhaenyra to the brothel, and it's just this really interesting perspective of it's all wrong. There is nothing right about what's happening. He helps her sneak out. He gets her into a brothel, or he shows her the lusts of life. And then in the movie versus the book, he walks away, and then she goes and does her own thing with her Kingsguard. And I hated it. But at the same time, it's like, okay, this is real. Back then, they didn't have all the classes we torture our kids through with sex ed and everything else. Was he actually a revolutionary in getting her matured so that she understood quickly this is a big deal, this isn't a big deal. It's really about pleasure. It's really about pain. There is so much more to life than simple skin and flesh.
So that one didn't actually make my list, but tying in with that though, it did make a little bit of an impact because one of the scenes that had me thinking was like they should have just hooked up and let them marry in the first place. And I'm not saying this is the most impactful, but it was impactful in the sense that that relationship you talked about there kind of resurfaces later on in the season when she approaches her uncle after his wife dies and says, I need you, uncle, and they can't challenge me for the throne if we get married. And then then Damon's like, well, we can't marry because you're still married. And then they set up a plot to get rid of her husband. And then they get married. So to me, I was just thinking like, wow, you could just like take care of most of this whole season and avoided a lot of this trouble if the father would just let the uncle and the daughter marry each other, which Targaryens do all the time anyways. If you look at the history,
common practice, yeah, at 11 BC or at AD.
So, it's 11 AC because it's not our timeline. So,
okay.
But in any case, I mean, I was just like, you could have avoided all this shit and done, like, forget about all this stuff and just have them marry, like, have Damon marry her when she was 14 years old when the whole rumor was going on.
I agree.
It's
so weird.
The father was looking at her already trying to betroth her to somebody.
It's so weird because to look at it from that perspective of those were the times and that was a custom and standard, and now put that into current.
But see, I think here where I kind of lose it with you on that is that this is like not even our timeline. It's not even like,
no, that's
not even our times.
That's what I mean is like back then it would have been okay.
Well, you mean back then in our times, we're talking about medieval. This is like not even like.
Right. I'm just saying even beyond that, like that was a common practice. It wasn't wrong, but to see that on TV today, it feels wrong. It's no different.
But it still happens like in Arab countries.
I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm just saying to me to see it on TV didn't feel right based on my own beliefs about give a kid a chance to grow up. How about the
aunt and uncle from Game of Thrones? That seemed right.
Dude, that one didn't bother me at all.
The aunt and nephew, sorry.
Dude, yeah, but at that point, we were so used to everything else that had gone on. I was just like, okay, we expected this. This is cool.
Or the brother and sister, the Lannisters.
Yeah, the aunt and the uncle, and yet they're the same age. And that's where you really have to also really consider different things with bloodlines and everything else is. Yeah, you can be my aunt. I can be your nephew. We're the same age. We're
brother and sister.
Age. Yeah, dude, I
was like first episode.
Back then, again, like, hey, I'm the crazy. It
still happens today. Look at the rednecks.
Please keep watching our show. This is not an attack. Yeah. We're just totally appreciating you, but making sure that the masses understand that's your practice.
Sorry, I used a bad stereotype.
And mine was sarcasm. So with that, I'm just saying it's weird. It's interesting, just like with Arya Stark, when she was a girl. We see her at the beginning learning to quote unquote sword fight or fence, and then later on we see her sleeping with an ironsmith. And even though she's of age, knowing that this series started with her where she was literally like 6 years old. It's like, okay, so yeah, she can be 18, but man, this still feels wrong. It's no different than being a parent. It's really weird. It's twisted, but it's also, hey, good job, HBO. Good job, writers, directors, for making us see something uncomfortable that wasn't wrong. Even though we can question it ourselves, it wasn't wrong. And that's the tough part.
So, saying that also kind of brings up to saying, like, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
I mean, just because you have a second deep fried Twinkie doesn't mean you should. I'm not disagreeing. I'm also saying Work hard, play hard. That's how I want to finish that one. Next subject. What was your third favorite scene? I'm going to play extra hard. Me.
That's really tough. My third favorite scene from this series. Well, actually, I should say this is my number one favorite scene.
Oh, damn. So it's not that hard.
No.
It's kind of loose.
I had to really think about it again because I've talked to you about it before and then I forgot about it until just now. It's when Rhaenyra's kid, when Rhaenyra went to go present herself in front of the king, but the king was pretty much on his deathbed, and so it was the Hand, who is the, I guess, the Lord of Hightower. And so she was trying to say how her kids should take over or become the lord of whatever area it was. I think Driftwood. And the king actually makes his way in to support his daughter. And when one of the challengers came up saying that Rhaenyra's child should not be the lord of Driftwood, and calls her child a bastard.
Which had previously been determined.
Which is actually the truth. The guy spoke the truth. But as we know, when you speak up against the government, even though you might speak the truth, you're going to get fucked most of the time.
Especially if you're in 10 years in hard prison.
But in this case, the king's like, because he had made it known a long time ago, if you ever say that her kids were bastards, he will have your tongue. So the king yells out, "Give me the guy's tongue." And Daemon, who happens now to be Rhaenyra's husband, walks up behind the guy, chops off his head, and he goes, "He can keep his tongue." That was like my favorite scene in the whole series.
So that one is also my favorite scene, but it's tied with another one.
Okay.
And the other one is when Prince Aemond takes his dragon, all pissed off because a little retaliation battle's going back and forth with a baby dragon and his uncle, right? And then his dragon eats the Black Queen's kid. And you see it on his face. That scene, it's... Man,
I mean, with his nephew, right? Because Aemon's uncle.
Yeah, I keep getting those so far backwards. I'm like, okay, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Maybe the nephew came first. I'm not sure.
That's just it. It doesn't even matter based on bloodlines and marriages. So with that, Prince Aemon kills the Black Queen's child. And just the look on his face and that whole interaction was priceless. But, I have to, as impactful as that was, I have to agree with you. When Daemon chops off that guy's head, it's like, hey, he can keep his tongue. It was awesome. It's just like, man, imagine. Oh, wait, that does happen in some countries.
That has to be a sharp, like, that sword has to be like super sharp and have like a lot of some weight behind it. Because, like, you're cutting through, like, bone.
So that was Targaryen, or what's that special steel? Not Targaryen steel? Valyrian. That was Valyrian steel.
Oh, talking about Valyrian steel.
Yes, there you go.
The dagger, right? That was meant to, like, kill Bran. That started, like, the whole, like, kit and caboodle for Game of Thrones. Makes its appearance early on in this show, in this season.
Yes. And... It's interesting to think about it, right? Because Targaryen steel, we all think about this. Valyrian steel, we all think about this. Ultimately, it's the only thing that could heat up the metal hard enough or hot enough to create this steel was a dragon. That's why I keep thinking Targaryen. But Valyrian steel, this steel heated to extreme temperatures, hardened with specific metals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It would take forever to sharpen. But once you did, that stuff never loses its edge. And people are like, oh, whatever. Like, okay, that's a fun little thought or myth or anything. Consider that again. Consider that for 1 second. And then if you've owned a good knife set versus a cheap knife set, you're sharpening once a month if you use it regularly just to keep an edge, whether or not you steal it. And what I mean by steal is take off the burrs every time you use it. A good knife set, you don't have to sharpen but once every lifetime or every 20 years if you steal it to keep the burrs off. There is a huge difference in what can impact these materials. And that's one of the things I love about it. It's no different than the Hirohito. Is that his name in the whole... I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but Hirohito swords for Kill Bill, whatever that sword is, that stuff's real. Like this technology, this craftsmanship is a possibility and a plausibility. So yes, how sharp would they have to be? Yeah, razor sharp. They do exist.
All right. Any last things to wrap this up?
Excited for season 2.
All right.
Didn't think I was going to be. That's why I never started season 1 till season 2 is almost out.
I agree. All right. So next week we are doing Kilchoman.
Kilchoman!
What is it called again?
Casado?
Kilchoman Casado. And next week's Smarter Challenge is actually going to be it's going to be like a self-improvement type of Smarter Challenge.
All right.
So, to kind of backtrack a little bit, about 4 months ago, I gave up drinking coffee, and that's been a little over a month since I had coffee. So, it takes about 30 days to change a habit, or to create a new habit. But what I want us to do is to kind of explore, and I'm sure you already do this anyways, but I figured it'd be kind of a fun thing to do for maybe the people who watch us, is to set up our goals type of thing. So basically, for those of you who don't know how to do it, is like basically what you do with goals, you set like a 5-year timeline, and then you do like a 3-year, and then a 1 year, and then quarterly, then monthly, weekly, and then daily. So we don't have to go as far out as 5 years, but maybe like go out as far out as like what we want to achieve something within 6 months. But what the whole Smarter Challenge thing is to do is to drill down to the daily, what we have to do daily to meet our 6-month goal, and kind of just like, do that for a week to see how that goes, to try to build a new habit or whatever. Because I think you and I both talked about we need to get better at going to the gym or do something else. So I just thought that might be a good Smarter Challenge to kind of say like what we put down as our 6-month goal, how we broke it down, and what we did to break it down to a daily thing and manage it daily for the next week or so. And just kind of talk about it and see, like, we're not like, I don't really expect us to see like any huge gains within 5 days, but it'd be kind of cool to like revisit maybe in like a month or two and see like if we keep it up and stuff like that, or like where we're at. What do you think?
Do it.
You like this idea?
Let's do it.
All right. You're saying let's do it. So that will be the Smarter Challenge.
All right. So next week's Smarter Challenge. Look at it, at least 6 months up to 5 years, daily changes we can make to impact our future potential, ultimately.
Yeah.
Ultimately. I love it. We got the Kilchoman Casado. Man, we have had, I think, 2 Kilchomans so far.
Yes.
And they have both been dreams. So for me, this Lagavulin, still fantastic. Thinking about the difference of like where the Lagavulin 8 would fall versus this. If this wasn't 3 times as expensive, I think I would drink this.
I would say this too. As this has opened up, I've actually enjoyed it more. And I probably would have given it a higher score now than I did when we first opened it up. But I'm happy with my 87.
Dude, 87's actually, you guys got to realize 87 is a damn good score. We will get to the point where we start to revisit things after we've got a baseline. And man, 87's a good score. 80, not so good. 87's a good score. 90, 90's great.
60 something, that's an anomaly.
68, throw that out. Do not drink it. Don't even wash your wounds with it at that point. Save it for the next Game of Thrones acid wash.
So with that, thank you everybody for watching us. We greatly appreciate you. If you watch us on YouTube and Rumble, thank you for listening to us on any of the podcast platforms that we are on. Please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. Once again, if you watch us on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and the like button. Once again, if you don't ever listen to us ever again, that's fine. We're just trying to hit the goal of 1,000 subscribers so we can start opening up some new features in YouTube to make a better show for all of you. So with that, thank you very much, and I'll pass it on to Jesse.
All right. Remember, life is great. And this is an interesting thing to say. It's also an interesting thing to hear. And I use that word interesting
It's interesting to live.
It is interesting to live. So interesting. But why it's interesting to hear or say is because what makes life great. And that is different for all of us. Our standard may not be yours, but what I can say is one of the things that does make life great for me is my friends. So cheers to you, Noah. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
And I'm not saying I have a ton of friends. I'm not saying you need to have a ton of friends. I don't know that you need to have one friend. It can be a cat. It can be a dog. It can be 12 dogs and 15 cats. I don't know what you do that brings you joy, but there should be something. And where I'm going with this is, for me, I learned from a great leader early on, and the year was, I believe, 1998. Don't think you'll ever watch this podcast, but if you ever do, Gene Yoder, please leave us a comment, Scotch Hour, and let me know you heard it, you saw it, you hated the show, but you got the comment. You gave me a comment about be careful who you call friends, and remember there is a difference between a friend and someone you have a friendship with, or that you are friendly with. And I took that to heart immediately and forever. And since then, I literally do not, if I get more than 5 people I call friends on a hand, I start to worry. And the truth of the matter here is, for me, math is very simple. And I have a 100% rule. And my 100% rule is if I have 5 friends and I also have 2 kids, man, I'm already at 7. I can't even, if I'm trying to divide things equally between just the 5 friends, I have 100% of my time. I'm down to 20% each. Now, my kids, probably more important than my friends. And I can tell you what, they are, right? Kids are more important.
As they should be.
They automatically get 25% each minimum. And that is a truth. Like if they need something, I drop what I have and go for it. So 5 friends, 2 kids, 50%, 2 kids. These 5 friends each have at the most, if it's equal, 10% even. So just think about that and consider that. But backtracking before I went on my tangent, remember, life is great. Have something you celebrate. And your celebration doesn't have to be a scotch. It doesn't have to be a beer. Probably might be healthier for most if it wasn't alcohol. But whatever your celebration may be, make sure you do celebrate it. And your celebration may be, man, I've been saving for so long. I could go splurge this $10 because I gave myself that in my allowance once I hit this amount. And instead I'm going to save it. That also is a celebration. So whatever your celebration is, recognize that, celebrate it, share it or don't, but realize life is great. Getting this opportunity. And there are days I wake up and I'm like, man, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't want to wake up this early, but you know what? God damn it. And what I mean by that is, God, thank you. I woke up. I'm going to take this day. If my kids need something, I get a chance to take care of them. I might see my parents. I hope to hear or see my friends. Life is great. Celebrate, watch the sunrise, watch the sunset, have a great meal, whether that's a $2 Taco Bell bean burrito that you love or a $72 bison herb butter filet, whatever it is, enjoy what you do. And remember, life is great.
Cheers.
Cheers. Until next time. Scotchman! Cheers.
Cheers. We hope you enjoyed this evening's episode of Scotch Hour. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, if you have not done so already, please become a Patron member, with memberships starting as low as $1 a month. Thank you, and hopefully you have a wonderful evening.